Washington. He is Representative Michael McCaul of Texas, and he is the ranking member of the Foreign Affairs Committee. Welcome, Representative. It's good to have you here.
Thanks, David. Thanks for having me.
So give us on where we are and what comes next.
Well, I think with the snapback of the sanctions on Iran, the lifting of these waivers on the 5 countries, I think Iran is getting a little bit desperate. I think about 40% of their economy depends on energy, and now they've decided to retaliate in the Straits of Hormuz to stop oil tankers that are not from Iran, and that's what you just saw the other day, and you saw 4 previous to that as well.
Do we have the military capability to do what Secretary Pompeo said we're going to do, which is to protect the shipping in the Strait of Hormuz as well as the Persian Gulf?
We do. It's expensive. We can escort these ships. We had drone aerial surveillance that detected an IRGC vessel putting mines on these boats. We know from an evidentiary standpoint this came from the Islamic Republic of Iran. And so I think this provocation is going to continue. Our role there is not to be aggressive in going to war with Iran, but rather defensive, protecting our allies and keeping that commerce open.
What is our ultimate goal here? Is it to get Iran back to the table to negotiate a broader agreement?
Yeah, I think so. And we have what I call 100,000 tons of diplomacy in the Persian Gulf. And I think the ultimate goal is to get them back to the table to get a better deal than the JCPOA, one that would include better inspections, stopping their nuclear production, and also the ICBM capability.
Do we see any indication they're inclined to do that? Because thus far, all we've heard is we will not come back to the table unless you start taking off some of the sanctions.
I don't think, look, we're talking about the Ayatollah. I don't think he is sincere. I worry about that. I think at the end of the day, they're going to be so cash-starved, and it will starve their terror operations that they have in Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, and Yemen, that they'll have to come to the negotiation table, or the people of Iran will rise against them.
Well, is that part of our goal? Is regime change part of our goal?
I would say regime change, but I think about 80% of the Iranians do not want to live under this oppressive theocracy that they're under. And I've talked to a lot of Iranians in the United States, and they would like to see another form of government rather than the Ayatollah.
Are you concerned we could throw out the baby with the bathwater? In this sense, we had Iran just today announce they're going to up their enrichment of uranium, go beyond, it looks like, what was originally in the JCPOA. Is there a danger here that actually will be driving them back into a nuclear program?
Well, and they're saying this really in response to Europe. Europe either buy our energy or we're going to do this. And so Europe has to choose between Iran and the United States. I think they're going to choose the United States. I do think you're right. We have to be careful. We don't want to go back to a full-blown Iranian nuclear production war.
So you say Europe will ultimately side with the United States in part because we have power through the power of the U.S. dollar and clearing as a practical matter. But what damage could we do to our relations with our Western European allies by really going to the well once too often on these sanctions?
Well, I think we need to work with our allies on this and not just make demands to our allies. I think they have to be a part of this. I think it's in the European best interest to want to bring Iran to the table to get a better deal than the JCPOA.
So there's been talk about potential sanctions on Instex, which is basically the group with which, through Europe, could trade with Iran in terms of goods. Do you support sanctions on that group then?
I don't think we're there yet. I think that's something on the table that we're looking at. But we have to squeeze Iran to get in a position. I think, again, I think they're getting very desperate. If you look at some of the propaganda they put out, and I don't know if you've seen this picture, but it has, like 10 American and Israeli ships being almost like a Pearl Harbor type scene. That's been pushing out to their people as to what's happening. Obviously, it's not. It's very deceptive.
Desperation sometimes can lead to dangerous results, not just coming to the table and renegotiating things. What is the risk at this point of a real military confrontation in the region? We have the Fifth Fleet there. There's talk about sending some troops as well. Yeah,
and I think, again, they're there in a defensive posture to protect our allies, to keep the Straits of Hormuz open. I don't think anyone has the appetite for war, although we do have military plans, obviously contingency plans, in the event that is to happen. I would caution that. Iran is about the size of Iraq and Afghanistan combined, and it would be very, very complicated.
Who's playing a constructive role in the region as far as you're concerned? Saudi Arabia, Israel, Turkey, who's really helping?
I think, you know, honestly, I think Europe could play the biggest role here. You know, Saudi is a traditional enemy. The administration did arm the Saudis recently to protect itself. And the Israelis, obviously, Iran is probably the biggest threat to Israel. They look at Iran as they are the largest state sponsor of terror. And when I met with Prime Minister Netanyahu, he didn't talk about ISIS. He talked all about